Honestly, maybe this sounds dumb. Or like something a kid would get upset about. I get that. And to be honest, I can't really argue with anyone who thinks so. Still, if you ever found yourself in my shoes, I'm not convinced you'd react any better. All of it started during a fight, a real ugly one. Kate and I had been arguing a lot more lately, but this time things got especially heated. I don't even remember what sparked it. It was probably something small, like laundry left undone or a bill that hadn't gotten paid on time. The thing with Kate is, whenever we argue, she starts tossing in every old complaint she can think of, even if it has nothing to do with whatever we're supposed to be talking about. Sometimes it's stuff from years ago, like, remember that time you promised to pick up my sister from that party, and you just didn't? Or she'll just latch on to any random thing, as if she's stockpiling ammo. This time, out of nowhere, she looked at me and said, "Steve, do you ever stop talking? You seem happiest when you're listening to yourself." Then she added, in this sharp, almost cruel tone, "Even when we're being intimate, you just never stop. It's like you can't help yourself." Everything went dead quiet after that. I guess she saw my face and realized she'd crossed some line. I felt it like a slap. I wanted to answer her, maybe tell her I never knew it bothered her, that speaking was my way of showing how much I care, how much she means to me. But I stopped myself. I just stared at her and kept my mouth shut. Maybe she didn't know what else to do, but Kate pushed on. "I mean it, Steve. I'm trying to be present, just to enjoy the moment, but when you talk like that, it totally throws me off. It's actually the opposite of what I like." That just hung in the air. She kept glaring at me, but she looked a little unsure, too. By then, neither of us could even remember what the fight had started about. I had no urge to fill the silence. Honestly, I felt wrecked, just blindsided. We'd been together over 3 years. Why was I only now hearing this? I'd always believed that my little words of affection during those times made her happy. Sure, she never said much, but she'd at least say something. I sat there for a while, felt like forever, but maybe it was 2 minutes. Then I got up and said, "All right, Kate. From now on, I'll try to only speak when it really matters." And with that, I walked out of the room. Looking back, I'm not proud of what I did after that. All I can really say is, I was hurting, more than I cared to admit. That comment hit me out of nowhere. I thought, all right, you want silence? Fine, I'll give you all the quiet you could ever want. The truth is, our fights had been getting worse. Our first year together was like a dream, the second was still pretty good, by the third, things had gotten rough. I still loved Kate, no question about that, but it felt like we were constantly getting on each other's nerves. There were fewer of those sweet, close moments, and more arguments about little things. A big piece of the problem was my job. I'm a sales rep for a plumbing supply company, so I'd be out on the road 3 or 4 days at a stretch every month. Kate hated that, but she knew before we tied the knot that my job was going to mean a lot of traveling. She was also eager to start a family, and I kept telling her we should wait another couple of years. I was hoping for a promotion soon, which would mean no more traveling. Until then, I didn't want to bring a baby into the world if I couldn't be home more. So yeah, those were the big issues. But lately, even the smallest things could set us off. It felt like all the good feelings we used to have for each other were just running out, and I couldn't figure out how it happened. Still, what kept eating at me was that line about my talking during sex. She'd called it the opposite of what turns me on. That made me wonder, had she been enjoying herself with someone else? Someone who just kept his mouth shut? Honestly, that sounded nuts at first. But then I started thinking about it more. During my last trip, about 10 days earlier, I'd tried to call her twice at night. Both times, she didn't answer, even though she should have been home from work by then. The second time, I tried her cell, but it was off. When I finally got a hold of her the next day, she said she'd gone out for a beer with some folks from her office, which was believable. Except when I called the house at 10:30, she still wasn't back. And there were these other little things. Like, 3 times that month, I'd picked up the phone and whoever was on the other end just hung up. Maybe that's nothing, but before then, that kind of thing hadn't happened more than once a year. So yeah, the suspicion started to grow. And finally, I decided to do something about it. I dug out the yellow pages and made a call. For the next couple weeks, Kate must have felt like she was living with a brick wall. No small talk, no chit-chat, nothing from me unless it was absolutely necessary. If I needed salt, I'd just get up and grab it myself. If she asked about the weather, I'd just hand her the paper. If she wanted me to make dinner, I'd just say, "All right." When she left for work and said goodbye, I just smiled and waved. It turned into this weird little game for me. Just how little could I get away with saying in a day? Kate knew I was upset, and she knew exactly why. At first, she didn't seem to care much. But after a few days, she started making an effort. She didn't come out and say sorry. Kate's never been big on apologies, but she did get a lot more affectionate. I'd get kisses in the morning, on her way out, when she got home, at bedtime, and sometimes just because. She'd come over and give me a hug when I was reading the paper, or rub my shoulders if we were watching TV together. Funny thing is, even as my anger started to wear off, it's impossible to stay mad forever. I still didn't want to talk. Before saying anything, I'd ask myself if it was really necessary, and usually, I'd decide it wasn't. I found myself listening more, paying attention to what was going on, and just keeping my thoughts to myself. About 10 days after our argument, Kate decided it was time to be close again. Whether she genuinely wanted it or just wanted to patch things up, I couldn't tell. After dinner, where she did most of the talking and I said maybe half a dozen words, she stood up, grinned, and took me by the hand. "Come on, Steve. Let's leave the dishes for later. There's something else I need right now." She was beaming as she led me toward the bedroom. She ducked into the bathroom for a minute, then came out wearing the nightie she knew I liked best, a short, lacy black thing that really suited her. She walked right over, helped me out of my clothes, then sat me down and knelt by my feet. I'll admit, at that point I wasn't exactly feeling it, even with how good she looked. But when she started being affectionate and close, it definitely caught my attention. Once things started to heat up, we lay down together, kissing and holding each other. I couldn't shake this weird feeling, though. On the one hand, I was definitely attracted to her. I mean, Kate's a beautiful woman and it had been a while, but at the same time, I felt oddly disconnected. It didn't feel like making love to my wife, it felt like I was just going through the motions with someone I barely knew. Was the distance growing because I'd shut down and stopped talking? Or had we just gotten so far apart that I didn't know how to bridge the gap? I had no clue. Still, I focused on being gentle and making sure she felt good and comfortable. When she seemed ready, I made love to her quietly, just like she'd asked. And you know what? I didn't say a single word the whole time. As we went through the motions, everything felt strangely cold and far away. I wasn't even sure it was what Kate really wanted, but after that argument, I wasn't about to start talking. Honestly, it didn't seem like she was having the best time, either. We finished up after a while, and the whole thing just felt off. She went through the motions, sure, but aside from some breathing, there wasn't much sign of joy or connection between us. When we finished, I rolled away from Kate. She scooted over and nestled against me, letting out this soft, contented that almost sounded happy. We stayed that way for a while, quiet and just holding each other, not saying a word. I had no idea what was going through her head. As for me, I just felt cold and empty inside. I didn't know if that was because of the silence between us, or if it was just a sign of how much we'd drifted apart. A couple more days passed with me barely saying a word around the house. Eventually, Kate started to get upset. One night at dinner she finally snapped. "Can't you say anything?" she yelled. "Don't you have anything at all to say to me?" After thinking for a second, I answered, "I thought that's what you wanted." And, honestly, I was a little satisfied with how few words I managed to use. She glared at me. "Well, it isn't. I want a husband who actually talks to me, someone who shares what he's feeling. I didn't marry some kind of mannequin, Steve." I couldn't help but chuckle inside. Kate always did have a way with words. I replied, "Last week you said I never stopped talking. I figured I'd try to do something about it." Okay. I'm sorry I said that. You've gone too far, Steve. This whole Silent Sam routine has gotten old." I paused for a second, partly just to irritate her and partly because I really was confused. "I honestly don't know what you want, Kate. First I talked too much, now not enough. How am I supposed to figure out where the line is?" She was clearly frustrated and angry. "Just knock it off, will you? Be the man I married. I shouldn't have said what I did. You don't talk too much. We were fighting, I was angry, and I just threw it at you." Again, I hesitated before speaking. "All right, Kate. But I've got to say, your words made me wonder if I really do talk too much, or if I just don't think enough before I open my mouth." I thought about it a bit more, then gave her a smile. In a weird way, this whole thing has actually taught me something. Kate smiled back at me, her anger melting away. For the first time in a while, I felt a bit of that old closeness between us, even if it was just for a moment. "Can I ask you something about being together?" I continued. I wasn't trying to pick a fight, I genuinely wanted to understand. Did you mean what you said about not wanting me to talk when we're together? Instead of answering, Kate just blurted, "Oh, for crying out loud, Steve," and stormed away from the table. She barely spoke to me for the rest of the evening, which seemed unfair. I was really trying to get where she was coming from. Even though things ended pretty badly that night, I woke up the next morning feeling a little more hopeful. Kate had admitted she wanted me to talk to her, and I thought maybe we could get things back to normal, or at least something warmer between us. Unfortunately, Kate didn't seem to be thinking the same thing. At breakfast, her chilly glances and short, tight answers told me the tension was still thick in the air. So, for the next few days, we hardly said a word to each other, just what was absolutely necessary. I couldn't help but see the irony. Now she was the one giving me the silent treatment, whether she meant to or just couldn't bring herself to talk. 3 or 4 days later, Kate came home from work looking really upset. She didn't say much and went straight for the shower. Over dinner, she seemed distracted, barely talking and losing track of the conversation whenever I tried. This wasn't anger anymore, it felt like she was worried or weighed down by something. When I asked her if anything was wrong, and I did, more than once, she just made a vague motion and said there was some problem at work. But she wouldn't meet my eyes, and I couldn't shake the feeling there was more to it. I honestly had no idea what was bothering her, so I figured the best thing I could do was wait and see what happened. Then the next day, while I was at work, I got a phone call that changed everything. During lunch, Ernie Matazzalo called me into his office. He handed me a manila envelope and filled me in on what he'd found out. "Sorry, Steve, but it's what you thought. They aren't even trying to hide it. She drives to his place in the afternoons, I saw her go there a couple of times. She parks right out front. He's got an apartment on the second floor in the back. With a camera and a long lens, it was no trouble at all." I thanked him, wrote out a check for his work, shook his hand, and left. Normally, I was the most dependable guy at the office. But that day, I just couldn't go back. I called in and said I'd caught a stomach bug, then went straight home. I sat down and looked through the photos, then put them away. The only real shock was the guy she was with. Adam Findlay hadn't been my best man, but he stood by my side as a groomsman when Kate and I got married. He'd always been open about thinking Kate was beautiful, he told me more than once back when we were dating. But I'd never thought of him as a threat, not then and not now. Adam was a smooth talker, always with a new girlfriend on his arm. He never seemed to want for attention. I knew at some point I'd break down and cry. But right then, I just felt numb. Cold and empty, the same way I'd felt the last time I was with Kate. Maybe now I understood why. Maybe now it made sense why she'd suddenly gotten annoyed by the way I talked during intimate moments. I sat by the window for what felt like hours, just staring outside. My mind was everywhere and nowhere at once. I pulled the photos out again, took another look, but nothing about them changed. I slipped them back into the envelope. When Kate came home, she looked surprised to see me just sitting on the couch, doing nothing. "Hey, honey. What's going on?" I didn't answer, just looked at her. I imagined my face was pretty blank, not angry. She frowned, looking concerned and maybe a little irritated. "Steve, what's the matter? Why are you just sitting there?" Her voice was getting sharper now. Still, I just stared at her. She could tell something was wrong, and she must have known it wasn't good. "Come on, Steve, what's going on? Did something happen? Are we back to the silent treatment again?" This time, there was a hint of sarcasm in her voice. I sat up straighter. "How long have you been seeing him?" I asked quietly. "What?" Kate looked genuinely shocked, taking a step back before dropping into a chair across from me. "What are you talking about?" I kept silent. She stared at me, clearly trying to figure out what I knew, but she couldn't keep up the act. "Steve, where's this coming from? I haven't been seeing anyone." "What kind of question is that?" She looked pale and fidgeted with her hands before clasping them together tightly. The silence stretched on, and she grew even more uncomfortable. "Can you just tell me what this is about, Steve? How could you accuse me of cheating? Maybe you're the one who's hiding something?" She watched me, as if she expected me to flinch at that. I just stayed quiet. Finally, she lost patience. "Well, this is pointless. I'm going to get changed." She started to head for the bedroom, but stopped short when I held up the manila envelope. Without saying a word, I pulled out one of the photos and handed it to her. It was a clear shot of Kate in Adam's apartment, and there was no way to misinterpret what was happening. She looked at it for just a second before dropping it like it had burned her, stumbling back into her chair. Her face went bright red and she wouldn't look at me. Steve, it's not. She couldn't finish her sentence. After a long moment, she finally looked up at me, her eyes pleading. How long? I asked again, my voice steady and quiet. She was practically backed into the chair, arms clinging to herself like she was bracing for a storm. She just shook her head, not even trying to hide the trembling. Honey, oh, Steve, I'm so sorry. She managed, her voice cracking. I just watched her. The silence stretched out, probably another minute or more. She couldn't handle it. Steve, please. Don't make me. Talk about it, she pleaded. I'm leaving you, I said quietly, and turned toward the bedroom to start packing. Wait, she cried out, almost desperate. Steve, please, wait. I'll tell you everything, just please don't go. I hesitated, then went back and sat down across from her. She looked at me, pleading for a little mercy, but she couldn't keep my eyes for long. She ended up staring at the floor. I stayed silent, just waiting. Finally, she looked up again, her eyes glassy with tears. He told me you were doing it too. That caught me so off guard, I nearly blurted out, what on earth are you talking about? But I kept myself in check and just motioned for her to continue. Adam told me. That jerk. I was already mad at you, and he just sounded so believable, I fell for it. Kate, you better just tell me the whole story, I said, as calmly as I could. So she did. About a month ago, she bumped into Adam at the grocery store. They'd always gotten along, and he'd always been a little flirty. She told him I was away on business. That night, he showed up at our house, pizza and wine in hand, offering to keep her company while I was gone. The evening started out friendly enough, but later he started acting all worried, like something heavy was on his mind. When Kate asked what was wrong, he told her I was cheating on her. He put on quite a show, Steve. Looked all sad and guilty, head down, wouldn't meet my eyes. Said you'd told him all about this girl you were seeing on your trips, gave me all sorts of details, what she looked like, how you met, even said you bragged about her. She went on, I started crying. Adam comforted me, told me I was beautiful, said he couldn't believe any man would cheat on me. He kept saying he hated to see me hurt, that he'd do anything to make me feel better. And before I knew it, we were in bed. And I only found out yesterday that it was all a lie. All of it. I just listened, keeping my face unreadable. She looked like she was about to break. I was at his apartment yesterday, and afterward, he looked over at me and said, funny, if Steve hadn't run off with Julia, we never would have discovered how good we are together. I just stared at him. He told me your girlfriend's name was Joanne the first time. So I started asking questions, and he couldn't remember any details. Nothing matched up. Finally, I just lost it. I screamed at him to tell me the truth. Did you actually cheat on me? And he laughed. He laughed at me. Then he admitted the whole thing was made up just to get me into bed. Now she was shaking with anger and shame. I yelled at him, called him every name I could think of, told him he was lucky I couldn't tell you because you'd probably beat him up. He just sat there smiling, not sorry at all. He made a fool out of me, Steve. And oh God, I can't believe what I did. She broke down then, sobbing into her hands. A part of me wanted to comfort her, but the hurt was too big. I couldn't help thinking, was she really that gullible, or had our love faded so much that she was ready to believe something that ridiculous? And then, there was my anger at Adam, a guy I'd called a friend for 15 years. I just sat there. Kate cried, her whole body shaking. After about 5 minutes, I got up. She watched me with fearful eyes as I took her cell phone from her purse and put it in my pocket. Then I went and unplugged the house phones and put them in a bag. With that bag under my arm, I grabbed a six-pack from the fridge and made for the door. Before I left, I turned to her. I'll be back. Don't go anywhere, and don't talk to anyone. I kept my voice steady, but she looked terrified as she nodded. On the way to Adam's place, I made myself breathe slow and steady. I needed to look calm. When he opened his door, he looked surprised, maybe even a little worried, but I put on a big smile and said, "Hey, man, you got time for a couple beers? Maybe catch the Phillies game? Kate's at a meeting." He hesitated for a split second, but then tried to act like everything was fine. "Yeah, sure, come in. I'm always up for free beer. How've you been, Steve?" We sat in his living room, watching the game, making small talk. I kept it light, and I could see Adam start to relax, thinking I didn't know a thing. It took over an hour, but finally I worked the conversation around to relationships. I asked about who he was seeing these days. He seemed a little nervous, but I just smiled and kept the mood easy. He told me about a new girl from work and how great she was, though he joked that she wasn't exactly talented in every department. I laughed and said, "Man, even a bad time is still a good time." He cracked up and agreed, "Yeah, but a great one's something else." We both laughed. Then I steered the talk back. I used to date someone in college who would just talk nonstop, even during the most private moments. Drove me nuts, it was just too much. Adam jumped right in, "Oh, I know what you mean. I like to keep it simple, just focus on the moment. All that sweet talk is for before or after. Once you're in the moment, it's all about the energy. Women get into that too, whether they admit it or not." He went on about how, when you really let loose, women discover a side of themselves they never expected. Then I leaned in a little closer, looking him right in the eye. "So, how was it with Kate? Did she like it that way?" He froze, eyes wide, finally realizing what was happening. After a beat, I hit him, hard, on the side of the head with a roll of quarters in my fist. He crumpled to the floor. Adam was out cold, just as I figured he'd be. I took my time. I stripped off his clothes, sat him upright in a kitchen chair, and tied him down tight with whatever cords and tape I found in his place. I stuffed his boxers in his mouth and taped them in so he couldn't shout, then went searching for a nice, sharp pair of scissors. When I was ready, I dumped cold water on his head to wake him up. He panicked when he realized he couldn't move or speak, making muffled sounds through the boxers. I just stood there grinning. "See these shears, Adam? They look sharp enough to do some damage, don't they?" He started thrashing around. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to take the tape off your mouth and you're going to stay quiet. If you so much as yell, I'll use these shears and you'll regret it. Got it?" He nodded, terrified. I tore off the tape and took out the boxers. He gasped for breath but stayed silent. "You were supposed to be my friend, Adam. I trusted you. And you lied to my wife just to get her to cheat on me." To my amazement, he tried to grin, even now. "Come on, Steve, it's not such a big deal. She's just..." He stopped, probably seeing the look on my face. I stared at him, disgusted. How had I ever called this guy my friend? Slowly, I stood up and gave him another good punch on the side of the head, right where I'd already hit him. He quieted down quick when I waved the shears in his face. "That's better," I said. "Now, here's how this works. While you talk, I'll trim. If you lie or try anything, I'll do more than just your hair, understand?" He nodded, eyes wide with fear. "Start talking," I said, grabbing a fistful of his hair and chopping it off at odd angles. As I gave him the world's worst haircut, Adam spilled the whole story, just as Kate had said. He'd always been attracted to her and flirted every chance he got. When he saw her alone that night, he tried to charm her, but when that didn't work, he made up the story about me cheating. He worked her up, got her hurt and angry, and then got her to sleep with him. After that, they saw each other a handful of times, always at his place. Unbelievably, even with me glaring at him and those shears in my hand, Adam seemed eager to brag about what happened. He told me the first time wasn't much, she was crying and upset, but after that, it was just like he liked it, no talking, just passion. He started going into more detail, then saw my face and finally shut up. By the time I was done, Adam's hair looked like someone had run a weed whacker over his head, just chopped down to the scalp in spots, wild in others. I'll be honest, there was a small part of me that enjoyed imagining him having to hide that mess under a hat for the next few weeks. "Is it over?" I asked, my voice cold and flat. He hesitated, so I grabbed a chunk of his chest hair and clipped it. He yelped, "All right, man, knock it off." "Yeah, it's over," he finally said. "Yesterday, Kate figured it out. I couldn't remember the name I'd told her for your girlfriend, and she started asking questions. She realized I'd made the whole thing up. She got mad and left. Right then, I felt done. I could have pressed him for more, but I just felt empty. I stuffed his boxers back in his mouth, taped them there, and grabbed a paper bag to cover his head. "Well, Adam, you crossed a line you never should have. Guess it's time for you to face the consequences," I said, keeping my voice even. He started squirming and mumbling desperately through the gag, but he wasn't going anywhere. I bent down and put the shears near his waist, just enough to scare him. I didn't have it in me to really hurt him, but I wanted him to feel some fear, if only for a second. He was shaking and pleading, and, honestly, the whole thing got to him. He ended up wetting himself, and the look of shame and panic on his face said it all. I pulled the bag off and took a step back. "Quite a look you've got there, Adam," I said. I went to his room and grabbed his digital camera. When I came back, I took a few photos, making sure to capture just how ridiculous and defeated he looked. That's it, Adam. We're done. And let's keep it that way. If you ever think about coming after me, just remember, these photos might end up somewhere you wouldn't want them to. I said this coldly, making sure he knew I meant it. He just nodded, the fight gone from his eyes. I pulled out his boxers and he asked, "Will you let me loose before you go?" I smiled. "I'll leave the shears in the hall and your door open. You'll figure it out." Then I left, not bothering to look back, the camera in my hand. When I got back home, Kate was sitting on the couch in her bathrobe, hair still damp from the shower. She looked small and scared. I went around the apartment and plugged the phones back in, then sat down across from her. We just stared at each other in silence. Finally, she broke it. "What did you do?" "I had a talk with Adam," I said quietly. "He's alive, and I don't think we'll be hearing from him again anytime soon." She looked at me with a strange mix of relief and anger. "Honestly, I almost wish you had done something worse to him, but he's not worth it." Then her face softened and she looked almost desperate. "Can we get past this, Steve? I can't believe what I've done. I was such a fool. But I still love you. Can you forgive me? Please?" I just looked at her for a long time. I'd gotten so used to silence by now, it felt strange to say anything at all. "I don't know," I said honestly. It was all I could manage. She started crying again, then came over and sat on my lap, throwing her arms around me, sobbing hard. I held her, more out of habit than anything, while she broke down. Eventually, she calmed herself, wiped her tears, and managed a faint smile. She leaned in and whispered, "Please. I need you right now, Steve. I need to feel close to you." I didn't really know what I wanted, but I let her lead me back to the bedroom. She took off her robe, revealing another one of her favorite nighties, clearly trying to bring us back together. Honestly, being with her that night felt as cold and distant as the last time. She was energetic, doing everything she could to reach me, but I just wasn't feeling it. Even so, physical closeness has a way of carrying you along, even when your heart's not in it. But this time, I didn't follow her lead. I did things my way, no tenderness, no connection, just going through the motions. I didn't hurt her, and maybe she even liked it, but it didn't feel like love. It felt like I was with a stranger, someone I barely recognized. I realized then that we were truly finished. The next morning, I got up early and made breakfast, putting out coffee like I used to do. Kate came into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes and smiling when she saw the meal waiting for her. She started to come over for a kiss, but then noticed the two big suitcases standing by the door. "Steve. Are you leaving? You're not really leaving, are you?" Tears welled up in her eyes. I wanted to leave without a word, to just end it all with silence, but I couldn't do it. I poured her a cup of coffee and got her to sit down at the table. "Kate, it's over," I said gently but firmly. "I don't know how it happened or why, but it's over. We started out so great, but for a long time now we've just been fighting, barely getting along, and those moments of real happiness have become rare. What happened with Adam isn't the whole reason I'm leaving. But you're not the kind of woman who would just fall for a cheap story like that. You never even came to me and asked if something was going on. You just heard Adam's story and went along with it. And then you kept seeing him. You even seemed to prefer being with him over being with me. The woman I married wouldn't have done that. You must have been looking for a way out, or you wouldn't have been so quick to fall into someone else's arms." I paused, waiting for her to say something, maybe to tell me I was wrong, to try and fix what we'd lost. But she just sat there, quietly crying, face buried in her hands. When she finally looked up, there was nothing left to say. I walked to the door. "Goodbye, Kate," I said, picked up my bags, and left.